There is this it here? Okay. There's a thank you note up here that we missed. It says, Mineral Church family, I want you all to know how truly thankful I am for your love, prayers, and support of my trip to India. It was incredible. It was an incredible experience that has helped strengthen my faith and love for the Lord. And I am beyond thankful for God's work and provision through the hearts of this congregation. Your encouragement has blessed me tremendously, and I am forever grateful for such a wonderful church family. I ask for your continued prayers as I begin my senior year at college at Pepperdine. Love you all, Paige Johnson. She's very thankful for y'all's participation in her trip to India. And we also want to mention that you might have gotten a letter from Cade talking about his future plans. And he is planning on doing an apprenticeship at Arkansas Tech University with the campus ministry there. And that is a bit of a mission fund as well. He has to raise funds for that himself. So if you got a letter, read it. It's very well written. He has he will do great things for God wherever he goes. He's done a great job with our youth. And one of the things that I love about Cade is that he's just completely, he is who he is. Like if you've met Cade, you know Cade. He's completely genuine, completely upfront with you about what he believes and how much he loves you, and that it's just a great thing. He's going to do a great work, and he's also going to be getting his master's during this time in ministry, right? Master's in ministry. So please think about donating to this cause. What would be great, and this is just, he has not told me this, this is just what I believe is, compared to him, an old guy just thinking about what he's doing. What would be great for him is if you could commit like to a monthly donation. Like if you could say, I'll write a $20 check on 15. I'll support him monthly because he has a monthly goal that he hopes that he's going to have to live on and that he's going to have to go to school on. So be praying about that. And if that's something you would, if you didn't get a letter, come talk to Kay or talk to Todd or Karen. I'm sure they'll be able to point you in the right direction. If talking to a 21-year-old is a little daunting for you, you can talk to his parents. I don't know what this is anymore, you might say. So please donate to that. We need better ministers in our world. We have a lot of ministers. We need better ones. Catch my drift. He would be a better one. And we need people who are willing to serve God in a larger capacity than just getting things right and preaching right sorts of doctrine. We need people who love people like Kate loves people. So please consider donating to that. If you didn't get a letter, I'm sure we could print you off one and hand it to you so you'd understand what's going on. Okay. Today is an exciting day because it's not often that we have a violent death in a sermon, but we do. It's going to be fun. Actually, we'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 6 if you want to open up your Bible so that we will have it on the screen. But if you would like to make sure that I'm not lying to you, then 2 Samuel chapter 6 is ideal. We have a tendency to be very comfortable in our church. You kind of get in your pew, right? We just recently switched up the seats. We had 3 rows, columns, and we moved it to 2 columns so that we could fit more seats in here because we would have needed them last Sunday. We had 202 people here last Sunday, and we needed those seats. It would have been, I was having trouble finding a seat myself. Now, one of the problems that you do, what happens when you mess up the seating arrangement, as we can with our chairs, we can change the seating arrangement to however we want. One of the problems you run into is, where's my seat? It's amazing How many times sweet, not here, but sweet old ladies have turned into demon people because you took their seat? Oh, welcome to church. Are you going to sit there? Well, it was open, yeah. Oh. That's nice. You know, they have like this real quick jump from one to the next. Comes out of them pretty quick if you take their seat. We like our church. We like we like the way it's laid out. At my church, growing up, we had a thing off to the side that told you what songs we were going to sing. It was the hymn board. And on the other side, you had the board of disappointment, which showed the attendance of Bible class and all that. You had the hymn board over here, and it told you what songs were going to be. And we had a thing that said communion, which meant communion was going to be after that song, and we had a thing called invitation song, and those were set like they were glued in. Because if you messed up the order of service, it messed up a lot of people. I was at a church, well, not at a church, I heard of a church recently, within the past 3 months, where the guy who was doing communion prayed for the cup first. And there was sheer panic. People were firing guns in the air. And he kind of had a, what do we do now? I've already prayed for it. There it is, sitting blessed. Should we pass it out? The leadership of that church made him get up and apologize and ask for forgiveness from the church. Yeah, Shane Reader does this. No. Like Nero back there. Let the lions out. So we have a tendency to love our church because we've gone to church. We know how church is supposed to be set up. We know where I'm supposed to sit. I know how when the song before communion is supposed to happen. I know what the invitation song is supposed to start with the number 9, and where we know all the stuff that's supposed to happen with church. And when you shake it just a bit, people get a little uneasy. You can be sure that once you are a little uneasy, that you're not worshiping God, but you're worshiping a church. You may even be worshiping the chair that you're sitting in, because that's what makes you feel holy. The God who created the heavens and the earth does not care where you sit. God who created the heavens and the earth does not care about some of the petty little things that we get involved in church. The reason we can find and we can nitpick things about our church experience, our worship service with our church family, is that we've grown accustomed to it. And we've forgotten about God's glory. This is the way it goes with small groups a lot of times. You got to figure out who's going to be leading a small group, who's going to be in that small group, and you try to do the best you can. I've had several conversations with Tracy. While you're sitting eating a bologna sandwich at your house, Tracy's sitting worrying about small groups. That's Tracy's job. The elders have told Tracy, you are in charge of small groups, and they have backed away and they've let him do it, and he's done a great job. Absolutely. But I've had several conversations with him where the words, what if, has come up about 8 times within the conversation. From me and from him. Because what if this person, we don't name anybody by name, but what if someone gets their feelings hurt? What if the group doesn't work out? What if this? What if that? And one of the things we're worried about is, as he mentioned, your name might not be on the list. This church is growing. It's been growing over the summer, really, and that's usually strange. We're adding people. People are becoming regular contributors to this church. People who weren't in small groups before are in small groups now, and they're going to be leaders of small groups soon. And it's hard to dissect an organism and easily lay it out into groups. We've charged Tracy with such a task. And so for you to go to the back and you don't see your name on it, I can tell you this. It is not on purpose. Not on purpose. It was an accident. It's because me, it's Tracy. Some blame probably can go to Wendy. Is she here? All of the blame can go to Wendy. So close. So it's because we hashed this out, and we probably had, whenever I first got the list in front of me, we had people written down in pencil that didn't make it to the top. It could be a typing error. It could be a whole lot of different things why you're not on the list. But if you go back there, and I hate to scold people in advance, and by hate I mean I love to. But if you go back there and your name's on the list and that really makes you mad, that's a you problem. That's a you problem. It wasn't a slight, it wasn't anything, but sometimes we are looking for something to gripe about in church. And if you're looking for that, that's on you. We'll come back to this in just a second. Let's look at our text for today. 2 Samuel 6. David has been king for quite some time at this point. We've skipped a long ways in advance. I had only a few sermons to fit into this series, and I wanted to get to this one. David has been king for a while, but the Ark of the Covenant, which is, as they saw, was the presence of God, was not in Jerusalem. It wasn't where David wanted it to be, so they decided that they were going to go get it and bring it up. They had rescued it from the Philistines a long time ago. Saul and his people had done that. Now David was going to go get the Ark of the Covenant and bring it to where he was ruling. Verse 1 says, David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000. He and all his men went to Baalah in Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim of the Ark. They saw the Ark of the Covenant as God's throne. They set the Ark of God on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Now, I've been in Abinadab's house for several years, so I'm probably close to 7 to 10 years been in Abinadab's house. And Abinadab has the Ark in his house. He's got all his decorations and then the Ark of the Covenant. Velvet Elvis, Ark of the Covenant. So he's got all, but he's storing this thing, and they say, all right, we're going to take it up. He says, okay, we'll just put it on a cart, and we'll take it down the hill to where David wants to take it. Uzzah and Ahio, son of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the Ark of God on it, and Ahio was walking in front of it. David and all Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord with castanets and harps and lyres and timbrels and sistrums and cymbals. It would have made you all very uncomfortable. So they were having this big celebration about they were returning the Ark of the Covenant to its place, to its rightful place, and Ahio and Uzzah are walking alongside of it, making sure it's okay. Look what happens next. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark of God because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irreverent act. Therefore God struck him down, and he died there before the ark of God. Then David was angry because the Lord's wrath was broken out against Uzzah, and to this day that place is called Perez Uzzah, which means broken out against Uzzah. Sometimes in the Old Testament I run across a story where I think, come on, God. Can I be honest about that? Like, the guy, he was keeping it from falling. You would think. Just, why? David was angry with God. Uzzah's walking, making sure this Ark of the Covenant doesn't fall. They hit the threshing floor and it starts to lean, and he makes sure it doesn't fall. Then he dies. David doesn't want anything to do with the Ark of the Covenant after that. We're not going to go near it for a while. What was the problem? Why did Uzzah die? Ahio and Uzzah were Abinadab's sons. So you remember Abinadab had the Ark of the Covenant in his house. Velvet Elvis. Ark of the Covenant. When you grow up around something, how comfortable do you become with it? Pretty comfortable, correct? Now you grow up around you grow up around the woods, you're pretty at home in the woods. You grow up on the lake, you're pretty at home at the lake. You grow up playing baseball, you're pretty at home playing baseball. You get pretty comfortable with it. A man tells a story about going to the Grand Canyon. I say, man, I think it's Bill Engvall, which I may be the only person quoting Bill Engvall on the sermon this morning. Bill Engvall tells a story about going to the Grand Canyon with his kids when they were really young, and they get out of the car and they start running toward the edge, and they're panicking, and their guide who's with them says, oh, don't worry about it. Kids and adults never die at the Grand Canyon. They have a comfortable fear of that height. Bill Engvall says, well, the question arose in my mind, who does die at the Grand Canyon? He said, those kids who are ages 18 to 24 and haven't realized that they're mortal yet. They get out on the edge and they say, take my picture out here, the wind catches them, and there they go. It's those kids that don't fear the depths of the Grand Canyon that end up dying in the Grand Canyon. The kids always, they'll run up and they'll start, their vision will start seeing, they'll pull back every time. Kids don't die at the Grand Canyon. But it are those who do not have the proper respect for the depths and the chance of dying in its presence that die. It's my belief that Uzzah didn't just die because he tried to steady the Ark of the Covenant. It's my belief that he died because he got real comfortable with something that was super holy to the point that he no longer saw it as holy. It was just in his house. Do you know that's why we get upset about names on lists? Why we get upset about little things at church? It's because we've grown up and we've actually decided that the process and the chairs and my desires about this place are holy, and we've forgotten that God is holy. We've forgotten that He can, that He is all powerful, that He, with the words spoken to existence, this creation. When we forget He is holy, we become dangerously close to death. Why this is so important, that when Tracy works super hard on small groups, while you're doing nothing, when he's working on small groups for you to dissect it real quickly, you get frustrated about it, here's what you need to do. If you're frustrated about it, don't go to the elders. You know what? Don't even go to Tracy. I want you to close your eyes and imagine the scene in Revelation. There's a scene in Revelation in which there's a throne of God, and on that throne is the one who sits on the throne is all they call it. He's too holy to give him a name, John says. They don't even describe him. He's just, everything in Revelation is described to the little just minute detail. God, not so much. He's like a corner of your eye. And on this throne sits the God who created the heavens and earth. And there's 4 living creatures around him. And there's 24 elders around them. And there's 144,000 from 12,000 from the tribe of Judah around them. And then there's everyone from all nations and all languages and everyone, just so many, you can't even count it, surrounding them. And they are all worshiping God because He is holy. I want you to close your eyes and start at the back of that and work your way through, saying, excuse me, to all the languages, all the nations, the best you know how. And work your way through the 144,000, saying, excuse me, I need to say something to the one who sits on the throne. And work your way through the 24 elders as they are bowed face down on the ground. And go and lay between the 4 living creatures, lay down on your face and say to God, who created the heavens and the earth, my name wasn't on the right place on a piece of paper. If you can do that with good conscience, then come complain to somebody. God, the reason we have trouble with the little minute things that bother us in church or bother us in life, we have trouble with just sinning the same way over and over again. We have forgotten how holy God is. The reason you want your way instead of God's way is that you have forgotten how holy God is. The reason Uzzah died is not because he glimpsed the ark and God had, or he grazed the ark and God has a legalistic rule that all who touch the ark must die. Because Uzzah wasn't aware of the holiness. I doubt Uzzah even thought about it like, oh, well, I know it's a really holy thing I should touch, but it's going to fall. I didn't just, it's like balancing hay. Making sure it doesn't fall. Do not casually come into the presence of God. Notice what they do next. David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, how can the ark of the Lord ever come to me? He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. The ark of the Lord had remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, for 3 months, and the Lord blessed him and his entire household. Uzzah died, and David's response was the response he should have had from the get-go. I am afraid. I am fearful of God. I don't mean terrified because he's an awful person. You're not afraid of him like you're afraid of a serial killer in the neighborhood. But you fear and respect him. Everyone says they're afraid of things, but they don't really mean that they're afraid of those things. Everyone says, I'm afraid of heights, but that's just a dimension. You can't be afraid of width. Right? Seems pretty easy to me. The reason you're afraid of heights is that you might fall. What people should say is, I'm afraid of gravity in extreme conditions. They're afraid of falling. People are afraid of dogs, but they're not afraid of dogs. They're afraid of dogs biting them. They're not afraid of spiders. They're afraid of them getting on their face. They're afraid of mice. They're not really afraid of mice. They're afraid of how silly it's going to make them look when they're standing on a table. You're afraid of what the thing can do. You're afraid of its potential. That's why we should fear God. Not because He is just inherently evil, but because of what He is capable of. You know, if you go into the throne room of God and bow down before God, you know what you deserve, like in that moment, right in that moment? Death. You deserve to die. He's too holy for you to be in His presence. You deserve to be wiped off the map. But yet there's a Son on the cross saying, Father, forgive them. Yet there's an empty tomb from which we get to walk out of our tomb as well. There is so much God has done for us. We respect what He's capable of, and He is capable of some very holy things. And when we dismiss those things and say, well, they're sort of part of the life. I mean, that's what I do on Sunday. We minimize them, and you're in serious danger of the wrath of God. There are times in the Old Testament where He forgave, healed, redeemed. There are times when the earth opened up and sucked people in. There are times when we can celebrate what God is doing, and there's times when He does something that just scares us to death. I play with my kids a lot. We play a lot. That's pretty much all we're doing when I'm in the house, is we're pretending something. They give good directions. Daddy, you see a fairy. Oh, a fairy. You know, and that. And so we have all this, like, they expect their dad to be graceful and merciful to them. So it just takes one tone change. You think I beat him with a sack of oranges. She doesn't leave a bruise. So there is just, I mean, once you establish a loving relationship and expect that they can do something outside of that relationship and that's still viable. You have a respect for when God says, love your neighbor. He's not just offering you a suggestion. He's not offering you life advice. The God of the universe is declaring that you should love your neighbor. When he says, take up your cross and follow me. When he says, forgive others as I have forgiven you. When he says, don't judge lest you be judged. These aren't suggestions. These are things we should hear coming from a holy, powerful, glorified tongue, expressing what he wants from us, are to be taken seriously. C.S. Lewis has said, joy is the serious business of heaven. God is serious about him, about you following his Son. It cannot be haphazard. You cannot follow God, sort of. I'll be honest, growing up in church tends to lead me to follow God, sort of. I tend to do that. I'm tempted to do that. Because you're just used to it. You're used to Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, you go. If there's a singing on Saturday night, you go. Every time the doors were open, we were there. My dad had keys. We were there sometimes when the doors weren't even open. So we have a tendency to just sort of become accustomed. We are Yahuwah. We walk beside something that is super holy, and we just sort of think it's just something we are around, and that's something we do. It's a part of our life, and that is nonsense. It's not a part of your life. It gives you life. It gives you new life. Sometimes, you back there, not necessarily you, but typically the people, the older crowd like me and you, we get frustrated with this group down here because they seem kind of disconnected during worship or during the sermon. Listen, if y'all are disconnected during my sermon, that's my fault. I'm not doing a good enough job. They're disconnected. Where did they learn that? Did they learn that from us? Who else could they have learned it from? If we saw God in a holy mindset, on a holy throne, we wouldn't have this problem of occasionally just thinking it's something that we can just touch. Look what happens next. King David was told the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went to bring up the ark from God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps. Now notice this time they're carrying it like they were told to do by God. The first time they had it on a cart. It's just something you throw in a trailer and take off with. But this time they're carrying it like God had told them to carry it. They're carrying it, and every 6 steps, he sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. That's a lot of dead cows. But they believe that God deserves praise with every step they take. They have this connection with the holiness of God. David mightily dances before the Lord. I was going to get Jamie to show us how that goes, but he declined. He's declining again for good measure. But we have a tendency to think that God's just sort of something. God's not sort of anything. God is everything. He created everything. He is in everything. He is all things that are good. I think we need to approach His throne with a bit of timidity, a bit of reverence, knowing that He is all powerful. And whatever judgment He levies on you, you deserve. But He is also merciful. As Kate said in his prayer, we just the fact that we get to come before the throne of God is a beautiful thing. So this week, approach the throne of God. And recognize it as holy. See how that changes how you view the little things in life. It might just make you forget about them. It's guaranteed to get you over them. Because you can't go in front of the throne of God and lay silliness at His feet. Not realize. No, go ahead, lay your silliness at His feet. But once doing that, you will realize it's silliness. You will see it for what it is in His presence. Don't get so comfortable with God that you forget that He is all powerful and that you don't deserve His presence. Take it seriously, because it's worth every bit of effort you have. It's worth every bit of attention, every bit of suffering, everything you've got. He's worth it. He's offering Himself to you. You've been taking church not very seriously. You've been taking the kingdom of God not very seriously. You've been thinking that church is your place instead of God's place. Your community instead of God's community. You can repent of that today. We'll let you. I should repent of that today. Those of us who grew up in the church, we have got to focus on the holiness of God, or we'll just become accustomed to the patterns of church. But if you've never given yourself to this God, He is holy. We fear Him because we respect what He is capable of. But here's the good news. He's capable of some very good things. He's capable of forgiveness. He's capable of mercy. He's capable of grace. He's capable of love. He's capable of giving Himself to you as you give yourself to Him. You've never entered into that relationship with God, or you've never entered into it seriously. Today is the day to start that path. Today is the day to start that relationship. Today is the day to enter His throne and lay whatever it is at His feet. Whatever you need this morning.